guys, my name is Abby and welcome back to a new video. So as you can tell, I am back at my campus. So I did take the last semester off, so it definitely, well, not like off, but I took it from home, so it definitely feels weird to be back here on campus. Yeah, so the good thing is though, since we are back in campus and we are slowly moving back towards having everything in person, we are having another fashion show. So my school has this club called Club Vogue, and it's like it's a fashion club, you know, it's about fashion. And so they're putting on a fashion show in November. It's like their fall autumn show, and it's called Lumiere. I know, it took offense. So yeah, it's just like, you know, the theme is just very autumn colors, you know, like orange, yellow, brown, red, those four. So those are the vibes. I did try to do some research about like fall trends to try to make my stuff fit in, and I usually don't dress in those kinds of colors. I really like more like pastel, bright colors, so choosing the fabric was a little bit out of my comfort zone, but I've been trying to get, you know, more accustomed to different colors and styles and to just try new things. So I really like the fabrics I chose, so I really hope that that'll continue on to the designs I make with the fabrics. Also, it's good as my last fashion show, I only had like a month. Well, this time I found out about it in like the end of August, and I started making it in September, and it's not until November 1st that the garments are due, so I do have about 2 months. There is some other things. Obviously I have class, I have other kind of responsibilities. I'm also making other things for people, so I don't have all the time in the world to dedicate it to the fashion show, but I've been trying to work on my time management and making stuff, and I'm having a lot of fun. My plan is to have 5 outfits in the show, one of which I made last year, like, or maybe, is it 2 years now I made it? It's the dress I was going to wear to my senior prom, so that's one of the things in it, so that's already done. But then I have about 7 more pieces that I'm making, so this is, buckle in, this is going to be quite a bit of a video, but a lot of the techniques and stuff, or like things that I used to connect it, I did for more than one garment. So like one of it I might have showed it, and then the other one I just skipped it because I was like, oh, I already showed it, so that way this video doesn't have to be like 50 minutes long, because let's face it, 10 minutes is already pushing it. So yeah, without any further ado, let's jump right into me making them, and hopefully we'll see these beauties walk down the runway.
For my first outfit, I decided to make a maxi skirt and cardigan. Starting off with the skirt, I roughed out some measurements and cut out an A-line skirt that was fitted at the waist but would flare out as you go down. This is my favorite kind of skirt to make, but I usually end up making the mini skirts, so it was nice to make it long for a change. I also think that a long skirt out of this beautiful butterfly fabric gives me nature fairy vibes in a way. I put darts on the back skirt panels to help them become more form-fitting and flattering, and after I pinned them, I just sewed them down. Since I planned on having a slit, I needed 5 skirt panels instead of my usual 3, so I took the skirt front and I cut it into thirds. I sewed 2 of the front pieces together all the way down, and then sewed the last piece to the other 2 with only the top part near the waistline seam sewn, with the bottom half open for the slit. And then I connected the newly constructed skirt front to the skirt backs to create one long skirt. Then I serged all the seams and added on the waistband and the zipper. To add decoration, I sewed a black lace along the bottom of the hem and slit of the skirt, and I made sure to sew down both sides of the ribbon. As an accessory, I made this giant bow out of the matching fabric and slipped in a hair clip to make it easy to wear. Moving on to the cardigan, I have never made one before, which seems to be something I say a lot, but I don't usually like to work with knits or stretchy fabrics, so I started off with taking a cardigan that I already like the fit of and trying to trace out the pieces onto the fabric. The smart thing to do would be to first make it out of muslin or another cheap fabric, but what's life without a little risk? The ribs in the knit were one way, so I had to pay extra attention to the cutting and construction of the pieces, but I used the same method as I did with my teddy coat, where I cut out the back piece, 2 front pieces, and 2 sleeves. I sewed the 3 body pieces together and then attached the sleeves and serged all the edges. To hem around the neckline, I cut out a long strip of the knit and machine stitched the right sides together and then hand stitched down the back edge, essentially creating like a bias tape. And then I did the same thing around the sleeve cuffs. Lastly, I hand stitched on these cute heart buttons and cut out matching buttonholes on the other side, and with this, my first outfit was complete. Moving on to my second outfit, this one was the hardest one to make. Inspired by like the vintage Chanel set, I first began with making the skirt. To spice up the pleated skirt, I made the waist part longer and fitted, and had the pleats coming out at the hip rather than the waist. I made sure to make the waist part more of a trapezoid than a rectangle to accommodate for my like hip to waist ratio. After making another one for the lining, I cut out a long rectangle and pleated every 1.5 inches. I sandwiched in the pleated skirt between the two layers of the waist and sergered the raw edge of the pleated piece. After adding in the zipper, I moved on to creating the bias tape. I meant to buy some at the store, but I forgot, so instead of going back and buying some, I decided to do it the longer and more stressful way of creating my own. I sewed down the bias tape on the bottom hem of the skirt, the top band, the seam between the waist and the pleats, and 2 strips down the front to create what resembles kind of like an airplane landing strip. I also went back and top stitched down the other edge of the tape. And then lastly, I added on these cute sunflower buttons for some added detail, and then the skirt was done. Now for the blazer, my least favorite part. Blazers are just so hard to make, and even harder when you're going off what you have in your closet and your deteriorated college brain. Luckily I had this cropped blazer, but I forgot to consider that it was not only tight on me, but also made of a stretchy fabric, and this would come back to haunt me. I measured out the pieces, and like the cardigan, I had 1 back piece, 2 front pieces, and 2 sleeves. I needed to put in darts to make it more fitted around the waist on the front, and unlike the cardigan, I cut out the lining pieces of the leftover black fabric, but did not want to line the sleeves and fear that they'd be too bulky, meaning I had to serge to the side seams of the sleeves. Once the bodice was together, I cut out a Peter Pan collar, but I can never seem to make them correctly because no matter what I do, they just like always end up funky, but this one turned out much more decently than they usually do, so I'll count it as a win in my book. I did not record the rest of the make because the collar stressed me out so bad I ended up taking multiple breaks, but for the last part of the jacket, I connected the collar to it and then sewed the bias tape around the edges of the blazer and the bottom of the collar, in addition to the bottom of the sleeves. Then to finish it off, I sewed on the same sunflower buttons that were on the skirt down the side of the blazer, and as foreshadowed before, the blazer was too small and wouldn't button up without removing a few ribs, so I made this tank top undershirt thing out of the brown and black fabric and added grommets to the back of it for it to be lace up, and after this whole stress of a roller coaster, the second outfit was finally complete. For my last make, I went out of my comfort zone and impulsively purchased this knit fabric with oranges and lemons. Once again, using a dress I already own, I traced out the skirt, making it more fitted at the waist and flowing out as it went down, with 5 panels total. Since the fabric is stretchy, I did not put in a zipper and thus had to account for that when I planned out my measurements. The fabric was also much more see-through than I thought, so I used a plain white knit fabric as a lining. Like the brown set, I forgot to record some of the steps, so after making both skirts, I serged down the side seams and connected them, right sides together around the waist, and then top stitched it down. For the bust part, I cut out a rectangle measuring only the front of my chest since the back would be open, and then top stitched down the sides. I then sewed down only the edges of the rectangle bust to the waist, leaving a gap in the middle for the cutout. Moving on to the sleeves, I cut out my usual puff sleeve pattern because would it really be an Abby collection without a puffed sleeve? I did my usual gathering and inserting elastic, and then sewed on the cuff to the bottom of the sleeves. As I attached the sleeves to the bodice, I also attached a thin, long rectangle strip to stretch across the open back to ensure that the bodice stays up and covers what needs to be covered. After hemming both the skirt and lining skirt, I cut out another tiny rectangle and curled it around the bodice rectangle in the gap to create the front cutout. Originally, I made 5 outfits total for the show, but due to model complications, I ended up having to pull it, but I do have pictures of it up on my Instagram if you really want to see it. My last dress of the show, my red dress, I actually made almost 2 years ago for my senior prom, but because of COVID, it got canceled, so I decided to put it to good use and use it in the show. The only footage I have of the show are the clips my sisters took, but like last time, I took some videos of myself in the outfits, although not as powerful as my models looked. I tried, so I hope you enjoy it.